The year was 1970. America was in the midst of the muscle car wars, an era when horsepower was king, and quarter-mile times were the measuring stick of automotive greatness. Pontiac, once the performance division of General Motors, had carved out a reputation for building some of the most potent machines on the street. But behind closed doors at GM's corporate headquarters, a perfect storm was brewing, one that would lead to one of the most controversial chapters in American automotive history: the saga of Pontiac's forbidden Ram Air 455 HO engine. Welcome, gearheads and conspiracy theorists alike. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into the murky waters of automotive history to uncover what really happened to one of the most powerful engines Pontiac ever designed, and why GM executives did everything in their power to keep it from the public. This isn't just another story about horsepower numbers and compression ratios. This is a tale of corporate politics, government regulation, insurance industry pressure, and the death of the original muscle car era. So buckle up. We're about to expose the shocking truth behind Pontiac's forbidden Ram Air 455 HO engine cover-up. To understand the significance of the Ram Air 455 HO, we need to step back and look at Pontiac's glory days. In the early 1960s, General Motors had strict internal rules about engine displacement and car weight ratios. But Pontiac, led by the legendary John DeLorean and engineer Bill Collins, had found ways to work around these restrictions. The GTO was born from this rebellion, a mid-size car with a big engine that created an entirely new category: the muscle car. By 1968, the GTO had become an American icon, and Pontiac was riding high on its performance reputation. Pontiac's Ram Air engines were the crown jewels of this performance empire. Starting with the Ram Air Y, these engines featured high-flow cylinder heads, aggressive camshafts, and functional hood scoops that forced cool, dense air into the carburetor at high speeds. Each iteration became more powerful, culminating in the Ram Air 4, a high-compression beast that officially made 370 horsepower, though many enthusiasts believe it made much more. But by 1970, the displacement wars had escalated. Dodge and Plymouth had their 426 Hemi, Chevrolet countered with the 454 LS6, and Ford entered the fray with the 429 Cobra Jet. Pontiac needed something special to maintain its performance crown, and that something was the Ram Air 455 HO. Deep in Pontiac's engineering department, a skunkworks team was developing what they believed would be the ultimate expression of Pontiac performance. The 455 cubic inch V8 had been introduced in 1970 as a torquey, relatively mild-mannered engine for full-size cars. But the engineering team saw its potential. Drawing on lessons learned from the Ram Air 4 program, they created a hybrid monster. They started with the big displacement 455 block, which already produced tremendous torque. Then they added the Ram Air 4's high-flow cylinder heads with round exhaust ports, a specially ground camshaft with increased duration and lift, a high-rise aluminum intake manifold, and a specially calibrated quadrajet carburetor. The result was nothing short of spectacular. Though never officially dyno-tested for public consumption, insiders claim the engine produced well over 500 horsepower and more than 500 pound-feet of torque, numbers that would embarrass many modern performance cars. This wasn't just a hop-up kit or dealer option. This was to be a factory-built powerhouse that would restore Pontiac's performance crown. Plans were made to install this engine in the GTO Judge, the Firebird Trans Am, and potentially other models for the 1971 model year. Test mules were built, and the results were exactly what the engineers had hoped for: quarter-mile times in the 12-second range, 0 to 60 times under 5 seconds. The Ram Air 455 HO was poised to become the stuff of legend. But then, suddenly and mysteriously, the program was canceled. Official GM records barely acknowledge its existence. What happened? As 1970 unfolded, several factors conspired against the muscle car in general, and Pontiac's ultimate engine in particular. First came the insurance companies. By 1970, insurers had recognized the risk posed by putting enormous horsepower in the hands of often young, inexperienced drivers. Premiums for high-performance cars were skyrocketing, sometimes doubling or tripling the effective monthly payment for a new muscle car. Then there was the Clean Air Act of 1970. This landmark legislation gave the newly formed EPA broad powers to regulate vehicle emissions. One of the first targets was high-compression engines, which produced more nitrogen oxide emissions than their lower compression counterparts. GM, reading the writing on the wall, announced that all of its engines would run on unleaded fuel by 1971, which meant compression ratios had to drop from the 10.5 to 1 or higher common in muscle cars to around 8.5 to 1. This single change would slash horsepower numbers across the board. Safety concerns were mounting too. Ralph Nader's "unsafe at any speed" had put the auto industry on notice, and federal regulations were increasingly focused on making cars safer rather than faster. Finally, there was the OPEC oil embargo looming on the horizon. Though it wouldn't hit until 1973, industry insiders could already see the trend toward fuel efficiency rather than raw power. But beyond these external factors, something more insidious was happening inside General Motors itself. While Pontiac engineers were perfecting their ultimate engine, GM executives were having very different conversations. Internal GM competition had always been carefully managed, with Chevrolet positioned as the corporation's performance leader, followed by Pontiac, then Oldsmobile, and Buick. But by 1970, this hierarchy was breaking down. Oldsmobile had introduced its 455W30 package, Buick had the mighty GS 455 Stage 1, and even Cadillac was getting into the performance game with the Eldorado. Chevrolet, meanwhile, had just launched the LS6454 and the Chevelle SS, an engine officially rated at 450 horsepower. Former GM insiders, speaking on condition of anonymity, have revealed that when Pontiac's plans for the Ram Air 455HO reached the executive level, alarm bells rang throughout the 14th floor of GM headquarters. The projected performance numbers would embarrass not only the competition, but GM's own divisions, particularly Chevrolet. One former executive put it bluntly, "The attitude was, we can't have Pontiac beating Chevrolet, it's bad for the corporate structure." But rather than issuing a direct order to kill the program, which might have caused rebellion within Pontiac's ranks, a more subtle approach was taken. This is where our story takes its darkest turn. According to multiple sources within Pontiac at the time, an unofficial directive came down from GM headquarters. The Ram Air 455HO program was to be buried. No press releases, no announcements of its cancellation, no explanations to dealers who had heard rumors about the engine. It was to be as if it never existed. Engineering documents were collected and secured. Test mules were disassembled, with their special components either destroyed or squirreled away by engineers who couldn't bear to see their work completely erased. Mentions of the engine were purged from dealer communications and upcoming product literature. A small number of prototype engines had already been built, and rumors persist to this day about what happened to them. Some say they were destroyed. Others believe a few were smuggled out by Pontiac engineers and installed in cars that now sit in private collections, unrecognized for what they truly contain. What is certain is that by early 1971, the official story from GM was that Pontiac would offer the 455HO, a high-output version of the standard 455, but one with the mandated lower compression ratio and none of the exotic Ram Air 4-derived components that had made the original Ram Air 455HO so special. This sanitized 455HO was still a strong performer by the standards of the increasingly neutered muscle car market, but it was a shadow of what had been planned. Its official rating was 335 horsepower, impressive for 1971, but nowhere near the 500-plus horsepower monster that had been developed in secret. As the years passed, the story of the Ram Air 455HO faded into automotive mythology. Occasionally, automotive journalists would reference it, only to be met with official denials or vague non-answers from GM representatives. "There are no official records of such an engine program," became the standard response. By the mid-1970s, the muscle car era was effectively over. Horsepower numbers had plummeted across the industry, and performance had been redefined in terms of handling and efficiency rather than quarter-mile times. Pontiac itself began a slow decline. John DeLorean left GM in 1973 to pursue his own automotive dreams. The GTO disappeared after 1974, only to return briefly as a badge-engineered Ventura. The Firebird and Trans Am carried the performance torch through the late 1970s and into the 1980s, but never again would Pontiac lead the industry in raw horsepower. Perhaps most telling was the fate of Pontiac itself. Once the performance division, the excitement division of GM, it gradually lost its identity. By the early 2000s, it was producing rebadged versions of other GM products with little unique engineering. And in 2010, as part of GM's post-bankruptcy restructuring, the Pontiac brand was discontinued entirely. The Ram Air 455 HO represented not just a lost engine, but a lost opportunity. The last gasp of Pontiac's true performance identity, before corporate politics and external pressures reduced it to just another nameplate in the GM portfolio. For decades, the story of the Ram Air 455 HO remained just that, a story. Without documentation or physical evidence, it was easy for skeptics to dismiss it as just another automotive urban legend. But in recent years, pieces of evidence have begun to surface that lend credibility to the claims of a cover-up. In 2005, the family of a deceased Pontiac engineer discovered a set of blueprints in his personal effects. Blueprints that clearly showed designs for a Ram air intake system, specifically for the 455 block, with notations about compression ratios and camshaft specifications that match the rumored Ram Air 455 HO. Then in 2012, a former GM executive speaking to a historian on condition of anonymity confirmed that there had indeed been pressure from the highest levels of GM to ensure that Chevrolet remained the corporation's performance leader. It wasn't just about the Ram Air 455, he said. It was about maintaining the brand hierarchy. Decisions were made that, in retrospect, probably cost GM a lot of potential sales and brand loyalty. Perhaps most compelling are the dyno sheets that surfaced at an estate sale in Michigan in 2018. These handwritten documents on official Pontiac engineering stationery show test results for an engine identified only as 455 Special Project. The numbers are eye-popping even by today's standards. 507 horsepower at 5,600 RPM, 512 pound-feet of torque at 3,800 RPM. While GM has never officially authenticated these documents, multiple former Pontiac engineers have confirmed that the handwriting matches that of a well-known testing supervisor who worked at the division from 1963 to 1981. If the Ram Air 455 HO program was real, and the evidence increasingly suggests it was, then what happened to the engines that were built before the program was canceled? This is where our story enters the realm of automotive archaeology and detective work. Over the years, rumors have persisted about pilot cars, pre-production vehicles built with the Ram Air 455 HO for testing and evaluation purposes. According to these rumors, somewhere between 5 and 12 such cars were built, mostly GTOs and Firebirds. In 1989, a 1971 GTO surfaced at an auction in Arizona with some unusual features. Its engine had round port heads like those used on the Ram Air 4, but on a 455 block. It had a unique intake manifold that didn't match any production part. And most intriguingly, its build sheet, which was still with the car, had unusual code numbers that didn't correspond to any known Pontiac option package. The car was purchased by a collector who planned to restore it, but before any work could be done, it was stolen from his garage and never recovered. In 2001, a similar car appeared briefly at a car show in Illinois. When enthusiasts began asking detailed questions about its unusual engine configuration, the owner quickly covered the engine and declined further discussion. The car has not been seen publicly since. Are these the missing Ram Air 455 HO test mules? Without access to the original engines for metallurgical testing and part number verification, it's impossible to say with certainty. But the circumstantial evidence is compelling. What we do know is that enough components for the Ram Air 455 HO program were manufactured that some have occasionally surfaced in the hands of collectors and restorers. Certain camshafts, specific carburetor calibration jets, and even a few of the unique intake manifolds have been authenticated by experts as matching the specifications rumored for the program. These parts command astronomical prices when they do appear on the market, a testament to both their rarity and the enduring fascination with what might have been Pontiac's ultimate engine. What is the legacy of an engine that was never officially produced? In the case of the Ram Air 455HO, it's a legacy of what might have been. Had the engine made it to production, it would likely have been the most powerful American production car engine of its era. It would have cemented Pontiac's reputation as GM's true performance division. It might even have altered the trajectory of the division in the decades that followed. But beyond these practical considerations, the story of the Ram Air 455HO speaks to something deeper in car culture. Our fascination with the forbidden, the rare, the almost was. Like the Tucker 48 or the Chevrolet Corvette SS race car program, it represents a road not taken in automotive history. For Pontiac enthusiasts, the Ram Air 455HO has become something of a holy grail, a mythical beast that some still hope to one day discover in an old barn or forgotten storage unit. Modern engine builders have even created tribute versions, using period-correct components and the rumored specifications to build what they believe approximates what the Ram Air 455HO would have been. These engines, when installed in restored GTOs and Firebirds, offer a glimpse of an alternate history where Pontiac's ultimate engine did make it to production. But perhaps the most significant legacy of the Ram Air 455HO story is what it reveals about the complex interplay of corporate politics, government regulation, and market forces that shaped the automotive landscape of the 1970s and beyond. After 50 years of rumors, denials, and fragments of evidence, what can we say with certainty about the Ram Air 455HO? Here's what we know. Multiple former Pontiac engineers have confirmed, off the record, that such an engine program existed. Physical evidence in the form of blueprints, dyno sheets, and rare parts corroborate these claims. The timing of the program's apparent cancellation coincides with both external pressures on the muscle car market and internal GM politics. No official GM documentation acknowledges the program, despite ample evidence of its existence. In perhaps the most revealing comment, a former Pontiac division head, speaking just before his death in 2011, said, "There were things we were working on that were revolutionary, things that would have kept Pontiac at the forefront of performance for years to come. But decisions were made above our pay grade. That's all I can say." When pressed specifically about the Ram Air 455HO, he simply smiled and said, "Some stories are better left untold." But for automotive historians and enthusiasts, this story deserves to be told. It represents not just a fascinating footnote in muscle car history, but a cautionary tale about how corporate politics and short-term thinking can sometimes suppress innovation and potential greatness. The story of Pontiac's forbidden Ram Air 455HO engine remains one of the great mysteries of automotive history. Was it truly the monster that rumors suggest? Did GM executives really suppress it to protect Chevrolet's performance image? Will a documented example ever surface to settle the debate once and for all? These questions may never be fully answered, but what is certain is that the legend of this engine continues to capture the imagination of enthusiasts around the world. It represents the pinnacle of a golden age in American performance. An age when engineers were given the freedom to push boundaries, when horsepower was king, and when the muscle car ruled the streets. As we look back on this era from our modern perspective of computer-controlled engines and electric performance cars, there's something romantically analog about the Ram Air 455HO story. It speaks to a time when performance was measured in cubic inches and carburetors, not gigabytes and kilowatts. Whether you believe that the engine was suppressed by corporate politics, killed by government regulations, or simply fell victim to changing market conditions, one thing is clear. The Ram Air 455HO represents the end of an era, the last gasp of unfettered American muscle before the realities of the modern world changed the automotive landscape forever. If you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive history, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. And let us know in the comments. Do you believe the Ram Air 455HO conspiracy theory? Or do you think it's just another automotive urban legend? Until next time, keep your eyes open at car shows and junkyards. You never know when the mythical Ram Air 455HO might finally reveal itself to the world.